really professional shows that I watch, the scholarly shows, that intellectual.
Grey's Anatomy. It's gonna be like Walking Dead. Where do you get food? Where are you gonna get the food, boo-boo? And that's why y'all don't cheat, folks. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie, and today we are back with another Dun Dun Mukbang! Woo! Guys, this is the most complex mukbang that you will ever see. Not that it's extra special for you guys, but it's because we have like 25 gajillion mics going on, because I suspect that this fountain is going to make it sound like we are doing a mukbang in an auto mechanic body shop. So, hello, welcome back to today's video. We've got an entire chocolate fountain here with us today, as well as 3 slices of pineapple, 3 ice cream sandwiches, some vanilla wafers, 2 of these Asian desserts, some marshmallows, strawberries, chocolate mochi, chocolate crepes, and chocolate almond ice cream.
And these, you forgot about.
What? Oh, the gingerbread cookies. Are you that excited about the gingerbread cookies? Now, before we get started, I just want to give a big shout out on my
Little mic.
And that shout out is to Simple Health for sponsoring today's video. Why, you might ask? Because I'm not ready for a
Little me.
anytime soon. Look at the shit that I like to do. This is a woman that is not an adult yet, and so I've decided that I wanted to take birth control, and Simple Health has made it so much easier for women to get and to take birth control. Let me explain. Right now, without knowing Simple Health, how do you think about getting birth control? It's probably complex. It probably gives you a minor headache. You got to get into your car, drive to the doctor's office, they have to prescribe it to you. You take that piece of paper and you haul your booty to Rite Aid, and then you go inside, you're waiting, there's about 5 people in front of you, the pharmacist is having an off day, she yells at you a little bit, but that's okay, and then you get your birth control, and then you drive back home. Do you want to do that right now as you're laying on the couch watching this video? Absolutely not. So Simple Health is an affordable, convenient, and confidential birth control service. All you have to do is click the link in my description and fill out your health profile. Now from there, they have licensed physicians and OBGYNs who are going to take a look at your health profile and prescribe you the right birth control, because Simple Health themselves, they carry over 100 different brands of the pill, the patch, the ring, and so they really want you to get the birth control that fits you and your lifestyle. Now from there, they're going to ship it to you for free. Free shipping every single month, straight to your door in confidential packaging. So if you guys live with your roommates, you live in a dorm, you still live with your family, nobody has to know what's in that package. And now I know what you're thinking. This sounds like a luxury service. This sounds like bougie, but it's not, because Simple Health actually accepts most insurances, making this service completely free to most of you guys. And if you guys don't have health insurance, don't worry, a lot of us don't. It starts at $15 a month. And on top of that, if you guys want to get a free consultation, just use the code BISS at checkout. I repeat, BISS BISS at checkout. Thank you, Simple Health, for sponsoring today's video, and let's get into the chocolate. Whoa, 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 whoa. Is the chocolate hard?
No.
It sounded hard.
I'm just excited.
Oh. Okay, I'm sitting, I'm comfortable. I got my skewers down below.
Got some marshmallow.
Okay, something's hot down here. Oh, drop my nose plug. It's a mess. Wow, that looks beautiful. I'm gonna do a marshmallow too. This one's strawberry. We have mint chocolate chip and cinnamon.
Am I supposed to drip everywhere?
No, but
right?
You did.
He got that drip drip.
You know, drip on his wrist.
That's good. It's
Wow.
not too sweet. Wow, that was really good. What kind of marshmallow is that?
Marshmallow? It's a smashmallow. That's what they call it. Smashmallow.
Wow, that's good. So these are already coated in chocolate. Do I have to coat it again?
Oh yeah.
It'd be like that. Okay, this strawberry already had some chocolate on it.
Oh, this is really good. What kind of chocolate is this?
I got it from Target.
Target chocolate.
Target chocolate. Market Pantry was poppin'. Okay, the mochis are melting. Eat a mochi.
Oops.
Wow, that's so weird. The mochi doesn't even taste sweet anymore because the chocolate's so sweet. And the mochi is like, I guess, a lighter version of sweet. What the hell? The skin just like peeled off. What? Wow.
It's very good.
Okay, that's kind of intriguing. Okay, I dipped the chocolate ice cream.
That's really good.
As you guys probably have read the news recently, there's a lot of talks going on about a virus of some sort.
Your mouth, yeah.
Don't really want to get into it because I am not a health professional or a health official, and so I just want you guys to get accurate news. Don't take it from me. What they've said so far is probably wash your hands, don't touch your face, etc., etc. Do all of that. Do your own research. Make sure you are educated in it. Don't take my word for it. But because of what's been on the news recently, a lot of you guys have been requesting for me to watch a video by the name of Contagion, and a lot of you guys have been requesting me to watch it. Yeah, or a movie, I'm so sorry. A movie by the name of Contagion. And a lot of you guys have been requesting it because you guys don't want to watch it yourself. And let me tell you, I am a little bit traumatized. I am a little bit scared. I am a little bit nervous to talk about it. I just want to put a quick disclaimer. I saw a lot of people talking about this movie as if it predicted the future, or as if this was what was going to happen now in 2020, because I think that movie was produced in like 2011 or something like that, quite some time ago. But I don't believe that to be true. I don't think that this movie is going to foreshadow anything. I don't think that this movie has solid, I think it has a lot of good health information, but it's really just pertinent about what not to do in terms of a health crisis. So the movie Contagion is, I will say though, like it is kind of eerily similar to what's going on in the world right now, but I won't say that it's similar in the sense that like I'll take advice from a movie versus health officials.
About the virus?
Yeah, so it's about a virus. The movie is about a virus that originated. Yeah, but it's a movie. And so I just want to say that this has nothing to do with it. And to be even clear, the movie is centered around the CDC. But because of everything going on, I'm going to call it the FCDC.
What does that mean?
Just so in case anyone's like skipping through the video and I'm like, the CDC did this, they won't be like, oh my god, the CDC did that. So I'm going to say the FCDC. That means the fake CDC, okay? The movie CDC. I just don't want anyone to, you know, accidentally think that I'm talking about the real CDC right now.
So you're talking about this movie today?
It's creepy.
Was there a happy ending though? No happy ending?
I mean, how happy could, I mean, it's happy, you know, but it's not like, wow, like romance, The Notebook type of I mean, it's not Game of Thrones. So the movie starts with a woman by the name of Beth, who is played by Gwyneth Paltrow, but I'm going to take out all of the actors' names from it because this movie had such a star-studded cast that I actually had a difficult time trying to separate the people from the people in the movie. Does that make sense? So this movie moves very quick. There's not particularly one person that you become emotionally attached to. There's really no strong personal plot line, which I actually read on Reddit that there's a theory that they did that on purpose because apparently when something like a virus strikes, nobody really cares about other people. It's just a frantic thing for everyone. So you don't get too crazy invested. I mean, probably the only person that you get that invested into is a man by the name of Mitch, who is Beth's husband. And so Beth is played by Gwyneth Paltrow. And it opens with her in an airport. Now she's at one of those airport lounge, airport bars, and she's kind of, you know, eating some peanuts. Now she looks a little bit gray, and now you open with this movie and you're thinking maybe it's a filter, maybe they edited it weird. She looks a little gray, she's not glowing, she's not wearing Goop products, that's for sure, and she's, you know, eating her little peanuts, and all of a sudden she gets a call, and she picks up the call, and the man on the phone says,
"Hi, this is John Neal, the man you just did it with in a hotel room in Chicago. I just want to say, how was that?"
Or something like that, right? So immediately you just get the idea that this woman met someone in Chicago. She's at the airport now, leaving to a different city, and she just did this dude at Chicago. And then it gets extra sus because at the end of the phone call, he says, "Make sure to only contact me through that email. It's the only secure one." And so you start thinking, okay, this is very strange. Who is this person? Who's John Neal? Who's this woman? And she is like randomly coughing a little bit, and he's like, "Well, are you sick? Are you okay?" And she's like, "It's just jet lag."
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god, I can hear. And so you can tell that she's kind of coughing a little bit, and so can the guy on the phone by the name of John Neal that she just did it with in a hotel. And he says, "Well, are you sick, Beth?" And she goes, "No, I'm just jet lagged." And so it cuts to her hanging up. She says, "Okay, well, I'll call you later. I'll email you later." And she hangs up the phone, and the airport calls for her name. It says her flight is boarding. And so you see her get up from this little bar area, and she was eating from a bowl of community peanuts. Now, since you already know the name and the setup of this entire movie, you suspect that's not gonna go well for the peanuts. You already know what's happening to the peanuts. And so she gets up, she gets on a flight, and all of a sudden the movie intro splits between scenes of different areas. It goes from Hong Kong. There's a certain city in Hong Kong. It's a tiny little city inside of Hong Kong, and it has 2.1 million people in it. Then it skips to London, who has
That's not a tiny city, though.
But like, I'm saying it's not Hong Kong, because Hong Kong has way more people, yeah.
So they're saying it's a small place.
Inside of Hong Kong.
Got it, okay.
So it's not just like all of Hong Kong, you know? And then it skips to London, and that has like 8 point something million people. And then all of a sudden you get to Minnesota, who has like 3 million people. And it all kind of focuses on particular people in all of these cities. And so you're kind of following this guy go home in Hong Kong. You're following this woman check into a hotel in London. And then you're seeing her arrive in a car to her home in Minnesota, Her by Beth Gwyneth Paltrow. And she's actually kind of signing some papers, and it says AIMM Alderson. And it looks like it's the company that she works for. Then it cuts to her inside of the house with her young son and her husband by the name of Mitch. And so she kisses her son, she kisses Mitch, and then they go to sleep, and she wakes up the next morning.
This is the girl who was at the airport?
Yeah. She has a husband, and it ain't John Neal from Chicago.
No, it ain't Boo Boo.
And so, you know, she kisses her husband, she goes to bed, and it cuts to another scene. It's just very back and forth in the beginning because it's setting the tone for all of these places. And it cuts to a man in San Francisco by the name of Alan. And you're gonna hate this man, okay? This man becomes so freaking annoying. This man by the name of Alan is showing a reporter some sort of video. And inside this video is of a man in Tokyo, Japan. In Tokyo, Japan, he's on a subway and he just drops dead. And he starts kind of foaming at the mouth, and everyone's just watching this. And a lot of people are like, you know, the people that are watching this from the guy named Alan, they're like, well, how do you even know this is a verifiable source? How do you know this isn't a hoax? And then one of the other people were like, yeah, I heard it's like, you know, one of those like art things, like people are trying to take a stand, and it's like an art projection of like, will people help him, you know? And then he was like, no, it's a conspiracy. And so immediately you can tell that this Alan persona loves conspiracies, right? Because immediately when you see a video of someone dying, you're not going to think about a conspiracy. You're probably thinking, is that man okay? Is that real? Is he alive? What happened? Did anyone take him to the hospital? And he's like, yeah, it's a conspiracy that the government in Japan is covering it up, allegedly. The fake government, the movie government in Japan is me really not trying to get on any government hit list.
I think we know, everybody know you're talking about a movie today.
But like, what if there's language barriers?
But I think you have to also say like that's what people can get into it now. Because you keep saying fake CDC reports, fake news.
Oh, I sound like someone.
Oh my god.
Well, now I'm really trying to get in trouble. Okay, sorry. The government in Japan, he's like, yeah, they're trying to cover it up. And they're like, why would they do that? I mean, who is this guy? Does he work for the government? And he goes, no, I think he works for some company in the US or something, but either way, this guy, like, it's because he's eating a lot of fish and there's a lot of mercury inside of the fish, but Japan is exporting a lot of fish that are going to different countries, and they're slowly killing people in different countries, but Japan doesn't want to be held responsible for it, and they also want to keep selling fish, so it's like this whole conspiracy theory. And this is what Alan's saying. Now, the lady that's looking at him is just like, dude, I can't write about this. I mean, none of this is, like, sourced. None of this is, like, it just sounds crazy. I can't write about it. And he was like, whatever. Once it starts getting the hype, you better not write about it later. And he grabs his stuff and he leaves. We are now in Atlanta, Georgia at the CDC. Which, by the way, I grew up in Atlanta, and there was always this like conspiracy between people who lived in Atlanta. Even like our teachers would talk about it as like a joke. Maybe, not a joke, I'm not sure. That usually Atlanta is kind of on the hit list. That we are in danger.
Oh, because they will attack the
CDC and let all of the diseases out.
I mean.
And so it cuts to the parking lot of the CDC, and you see this man that we'll later call Dr. Ellis, and he's kind of the main head of the CDC at this point. And you see a janitor, and the janitor says, oh, Dr. Ellis, could I ask you a quick question? And he goes, you know, my son's been struggling a lot at school. Is there any way that you could take a look at him? And he goes, well, what's happening to him? And he goes, oh, he just has a hard time focusing. And the janitor seems really nice. And Dr. Ellis goes, well, I'm not really that type of doctor. And immediately the janitor just kind of sinks down because it's kind of like defeating, right? Maybe he can't afford a doctor, and so he just kind of sinks. And then you see Dr. Ellis go, oh, okay, but you know what? Maybe I can refer someone.
Yeah.
And the janitor just says, thank you so much, Dr. Ellis. And you can kind of see that they do get along. And Dr. Ellis walks into the CDC, and immediately he's on phone calls with the World Health Organization that's based in Geneva, Switzerland, right? And they're talking through video conference, and they're saying, listen, okay, how many cases are there? And they go, well, we have one in Ukraine, we have one in London, I think we have 2 in London, we have 1 in Hong Kong, and is there something going on in Minnesota, right? And it cuts to Beth. And it's like day 3 at this point, and Beth is eating dinner with her husband, just pizza, and her husband even had to pick up Clark, which is his stepson, the son that we saw earlier, right, from school, because he was feeling sick too. And she's eating pizza, and all of a sudden she collapses. And so he's like, okay, what's going on? And so he brings her to the hospital, and obviously Clark is with the babysitter, and, you know, they're all like doing clear, check, clear, and it's like a shit show, an absolute shit show.
Passed out?
Yeah, in the hospital, and she's like having a seizure, right? And so they push him out of the room. They're like, you need to get out of here, you need to get out of here. And so he's outside waiting when all of a sudden a doctor approaches him, probably after like 10 minutes. It seemed very, very quick. There was no indication that it took a while. After like 10 minutes, and he says, okay, listen, your wife came in with this condition. Has she ever had seizures before? He's like, no, she's never had a seizure before. And he says, okay, well, blah, 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 blah. We did everything we could, and I'm so sorry to give you this news, but your wife has passed.
What?
Yeah. And that's exactly what the husband said. Mitch goes, okay, yeah. And then he goes, okay, do you understand the circumstances? Like the doctor's asking him, and he goes, yeah, absolutely. So when can I see her?
He literally didn't register.
Yeah, and so the doctors are standing there like, and so they're like, okay, yeah, so I know that this is happening very quickly. Has she been traveling or anything? And he goes, yeah, she just got back from a business trip to Hong Kong. And they're like, Hong Kong? Okay, check the bulletins. They check the bulletins because apparently, I don't know, I'm not a medical professional. And they said the only thing happening in Hong Kong is H1N1, the flu, and some other thing, but it doesn't look like she has any of those for sure.
So there's no symptom or anything that's been alerted, right?
And then he was like, it's kind of common maybe with like HIV. And, you know, Mitch gets mad. My wife doesn't have HIV, and he gets upset.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'm so sorry. And he's like, what are you talking about? Let me see her. We were just having dinner. What are you saying? What do you mean she's dead, you know? And he gets really upset, and they're like, we're sorry. There's nothing we can do. And so it cuts to him inside of a car, and he's driving, I guess, home. You don't really know where until he gets a call. And you hear him say, call 911. Hang up and call 911. And he rushes into the house where he gets dropped off. And he runs upstairs, and there's a woman saying, I don't know what happened. He had a fever. And he opens the door, and there's Clark laying on the bed, and he goes, Clark, are you okay? And he flips him over, and Clark is dead.
What?
And
this
so
is ridiculous.
after that, there's obviously news going around that something is spreading. And so immediately Mitch gets quarantined and isolated inside of a hospital. Like one of those with like the glass walls that you see on
Like the really professional shows that I watch, the scholarly shows, that intellectual.
Grey's Anatomy. And so it has like the window. It's like the window where like the patient is isolated, and there's like people outside with the phone. It's like jail, but for sick people, yeah. And so he's like isolated in one of those, and all of a sudden his daughter runs in, and you're getting a little bit confused, okay? Because you're like, what's going on? Like Clark is obviously his stepson. Beth is obviously a second wife, and the daughter runs in, and she's like, Dad, are you okay? You know, and he's like, go stay with Mom. It's dangerous here. And she's like, no, you don't have anyone. I'm gonna stay with you. And she's like, are you okay? I heard about Beth. And then, you know, she's asking about Clark, and immediately the dad, Mitch, doesn't want to scare his daughter, so he lies and he says, yeah, Clark's gonna stay with his grandma. He's fine, just a little, you know, he's fine. He wasn't around Beth.
So the daughter has heard about the son, the mom, but doesn't know the son's died as well.
Her stepbrother, yeah.
Okay, that's a little extreme though. 3 days and just.
I know, yeah.
So their disease is much worse.
Wow. So good.
What happened to the mochi? What's going on?
Ew, why is it like that?
I know.
Why is the ice cream on the outside? Why was that so satisfying?
That's cute.
I swear it's gonna slow down. I know we're jumping from a lot of places right now. And so obviously Beth and Clark are dead. And that is very insensitive. It's a movie. And Mitch is isolated in a hospital because all the doctors are very confused. So he's isolated in a Minnesota hospital. And later a CDC representative is gonna come. I didn't really know this. I guess like in my brain I didn't really understand how the CDC works. But there's a lot of them that travel to different places that deal with small outbreaks. What they're called are clusters. So like in a community there might be a sudden burst of some sort of, you know, whether it's the flu or something, and they go and try to study it, make sure it is that and it's nothing that we've never heard of, etc., and try to contain it as much as possible. And so they kind of travel around. It cuts back to the CDC and the World Health Organization just talking about how, you know, intense this is. And the World Health Organization, there's a woman by the name of Leonara, and Leonara says, okay, listen, I think that it's, you know, coming from a Hong Kong apartment complex, and they've already done all of the right measures of quarantining the apartment complex. They've currently isolated everyone that's come in contact with a man in Hong Kong who has passed, and they're also quarantining anyone that went in and out. They're just keeping everyone under supervision, etc., etc. And now, as she's saying all of that, it shows people in Hong Kong being quarantined and being checked out, but it also shows the wife of the man that died, that we saw very early on in the movie, taking a bus to Guangdong province.
Guangdong, yeah.
Which has a population of 96 million people.
Yeah.
And as she's on the bus, you can see that she's slowly getting sick. She has his ashes in a jar, and I guess like that's where he'll be buried. And when the bus gets there, she's dead.
In the bus?
Yeah. And a woman had touched her saying, hello, are you
Oh my
okay?
God, this is
And so
so
immediately
scary.
you start realizing, oh, this is not going to be a happy-go-lucky movie. This is about to get real serious. And so the CDC starts freaking out, and they're like, okay, so we've got 2 in Minnesota. They get a call. Suddenly they have 1 in Chicago. And it cuts to Chicago and a man being escorted into an ambulance, and they say, Mr. Neal, have you ever had seizures before? And the wife is in the background going, no, he's young. He's never had a seizure. He's only in his 50s. What's going on? We woke up this morning, and we both woke up sick. Why is he, you know, and she seems very shook. And immediately you can kind of take from all the information that we've gathered so far that this is the man that Beth had an affair with in Chicago that is now dying.
Oh my God.
And that's why y'all don't cheat, folks. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. And so at this point, you know, everyone starts freaking out, and the CDC and the World Health Organization are saying things like, it's gonna spread because you're talking about Hong Kong, which is a harbor, which means there's a lot of imports, exports going on. There's a lot of traffic. It's a highly densely populated city, and apparently the city that the first man died in is called Calhoun, Hong Kong, and it's the world's most densely populated part. So you're talking about a lot of people, like 2.1 million people in a very small area, so densely populated. And that's where allegedly the apartment complex was in the movie. And so they're saying, yeah, it's absolutely 1000% going to spread. Like, this containment is not going to work. And in the movie, they kept referring it to, similar to SARS, we're going to be quarantining and isolating. And so they kept, you know, saying SARS and SARS over and over again. And all of a sudden, Beth is being, you know, autopsied inside the hospital, and they cut her skull open. And there's 2 medical examiners. You can see that one is much older and one's much younger, so maybe this is his assistant. And immediately, once he cuts through Beth, he flips over her skull. The main medical examiner starts backing away from the table, saying, oh my God.
Are they protected like crazy?
Yeah. And the assistant's like, okay, what should I do? And he goes, back away from the table. And so he backs away from the table, and he goes, should I call someone? And the medical examiner looks at him and says, yeah, call everyone. Because this is something he's never seen before.
Oh, I thought he knew what's going on, but he has no idea what's going on. But what's going on?
That's scarier. He has no idea what's going on. And so immediately
Did you see what's going on?
No, you see a bunch of people from the CDC being called in. They're, you know, the CDC apparently, I didn't know this, but there's different levels of protection. And what they call is like B4 unit or something, or B14 or something like that, right? Is like the highest protected level. These people walk around in spacesuits with some sort of hose that gives them fresh oxygen that's probably like HVAC back sterilized into their little spacesuit, and they've got like so many checkpoints, and they're staring at this, and they're just so confused.
I think there's what I've read before. There's like 4 different points,
Yeah, there's 4
levels. The final one is SARS. This is just side by side.
Yeah, and so they're on that level, and they're like, there's a woman and a man, right? And the woman is Allie. Her name's Allie. She's a doctor as well. And she's looking at it, and she's just shocked. She just doesn't understand it. And so she's like, okay, I've never seen this before. We need to send this over to Dr. Sussman in San Francisco. He's the only one that's going to be able to know what this is. And if he doesn't know, then we're really screwed. And so you have a bunch of like communications running around, and it seems like an entire show. But at this point, you've got Dr. Ellis, who is the main dude of the CDC, who's kind of instructing people to do what, and he's the one in contact with the World Health Organization. You've also got Allie, who works in the highest level, Dr. Allie in the CDC, and then you've got Dr. Erin, who is played by Kate Winslet, and she is another doctor of the CDC, and she's one of those that travel around. And so Dr. Ellis tells her, hey, why don't you go to Minnesota, because apparently there's 2 school children who died from it, there's one of the moms who died from it. Just talk to the dude. There's a guy in isolation. They're studying him right now. They're monitoring him. It doesn't seem like he's sick yet, which is crazy. Just see what you can do from there. So she flies over to Minnesota, and she sits down with the Minnesota board from that hospital. Now, this is where it gets very, very scary, because you realize, like, in moments like this, I guess my dumb ass is sitting here like,
Ooh, like we're gonna all come together. The world is a beautiful place.
but it's like the board in Minnesota of that hospital is like, well, that's not in our budget. Are you gonna do it from the CDC budget? Like, what are you gonna do, right? And so she's trying to explain to them, like, this is very serious. And she's like, I would tell everyone in this small town of Minnesota, they've got to do something. Like, and they're like, no, we can't have them panic. And so there's this huge debate. And so the lady from the CDC is just telling this board, like, listen, it's going to be transferred by surfaces. It's not just human-to-human contact. It stays alive on surfaces for at least a couple hours. And so you have to make sure people are washing their hands, and people are going to get it, and it's going to spread because humans touch their face about 2,000 to 3,000 times a day.
And that's the same as...
Yeah.
Oh
and then
gosh.
the Minnesota board is like, what are you talking about? 2 to 3 times a day? Really, CDC lady? You sound crazy.
2,000 to 3,000 times.
2,000 to 3,000 times. And she said, yes, about 3 to 6 times every waking minute that you are alive, you touch your face. 3 to 6 times every single minute you are touching some part of your face.
Really?
Is what she said. I mean, I don't know. Y'all should fact check Kate Winslet. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she's like, yeah, people are going to be, doing all of that. And she's like, well, what's the R naught for this? That's what we have to look at, because they're kind of debating how to break it to the community. Yes, the community is curious. You have 2 young boys who passed away. You have a mother that passed away. What's happening? They're going to want answers. And so the debate was, the CDC woman, Dr. Erin, is saying, well, it's kind of like Shark Week. If you put out a movie about how scary sharks are, you have less people going into the water. So that could be good. But then you have the board of Minnesota directors, the health organization, saying like, well, no, because last time we said stuff about the flu and we had a bunch of healthy people who were panicking and it caused absolute chaos. The last thing you want is to have a bunch of healthy people going to these hospitals around sick people getting sick from now you've got a bunch of sick people. And so they're kind of arguing, and she goes, okay, well, we just have to look at the R naught. And the R naught stands for the reproductive rate, right? So for the flu, they said for every 1 person that's sick, they give it to 1 person while they're contagious. So it's 1. They said that's pretty low. Smallpox, they said it was around 3. So every 1 person that's sick, they give it to 3 people before they are healed. And they said before there was a vaccine for polio, that one was around 4 to 6 people. And that was massive. And that was very, very scary. And they concluded that the R naught right now for this virus, which was called like ME something, right, was 2. So for every 1 person sick, it's 2.
Okay.
And they said that the incubation period, which is about the time that the symptoms can show up, is about 10 days. And they said that people are contagious without even showing the symptoms of this.
This is too similar.
Yeah. And so they were like, yeah, we do need to study him, and we do need to get ready. We need to get prepared. And so she had come with another CDC colleague, and they started looking at a bunch of like school stadiums and like all of these massive indoor like basketball stadiums, right? And she's kind of planning, and she's like, okay, we're going to put just like 10 beds per row, starting from the ones with the lowest symptoms to like the more higher symptoms, et cetera, et cetera. She's like, I want all of these here, blankets, we need food, we need this. And then you have the Minnesota Board of Directors walk in, and they seem angry. And you're like, why the are they angry? And they're like, well, is this coming out of our budget or the CDC's? Because the hospital doesn't want to pay for this. So, like, you see that there's, like, a level of, like, yes, people are sick and dying.
But also, like, whose budget?
Like, it's just kind of scary that that's how the world works. And so she's like, ridiculous, this is ridiculous. Anyways, get the beds. And we need 3 more of these stadiums because she suspects there is going to be a big outburst. And so at this point, now it cuts back to the CDC and they're talking about how this virus is very scary, you know, and Dr. Ellis is saying, well, are we onto a vaccine? Like Homeland Security is visiting them, like the CIA is visiting them, and they're like, are we coming up with a vaccine? Like what's going on, right? And the Dr. Ali, who's the one that works in the highest level and is studying the virus, and she's saying, it's different because this virus right now is mutating a lot. And so it's almost like the way that the cells fit, like there's a virus and this is your cell. It just like perfectly fits into your cell and then kills it.
Okay. What does that mean?
So it just like, it's a strong virus. And she was saying what's crazy is that, you know, this virus is growing faster than us because it's adapting to humans faster than we understand it. And so then Dr. Ellis is like, well, yeah, because it has nothing else to do. So it's like humans are like running around looking for stadiums, trying to fix people, going to soccer practice. But this virus is like,
the only thing I gotta do is kill more people.
Technically.
They're sassy.
Yeah, very sassy. And so they're like, okay, we need to study more. And then all of a sudden it cuts to San Francisco with the Dr. Sussman. The doctor that Dr. Ali said, if he doesn't know what it is, nobody does. And he's outside in the middle of a bunch of hospitals at nighttime taking a phone call. And he's like, okay, well, I need to do this, this, and this, and this. And all of a sudden you see that reporter by the name of Alan, the one that said the Japanese man was a conspiracy theory, etc., right? Rush up to him with a recorder and he's like, well, Dr. Sussman, here we are again. And Dr. Sussman is like, oh my God, are you done with it? Get out of here, right? And he's like, you have to show some respect for some journalists and writers. And then the doctor's like, a writer? You have a fucking blog, bro, right? And he's like being real sassy and he's like, anyways, I heard this new thing is a biological weapon. And the doctor is like, biological weapon? What are you talking about? And he's like, I heard it was man-made to kill people. This means war. And he's like saying all these crazy conspiracies. And the doctor is like, get out of here, dude. Just get out. And so he walks away. And so now you're seeing, okay, this is how it's going to happen. Like, obviously, people are fighting for, to understand it, a vaccine. But you also have a bunch of people freaking out because they think it's a conspiracy.
It's too similar. This is freaking crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's how the world works when things like this happen.
Yeah, but it gets even scarier in the movie, so I hope it doesn't work like this in real life. It cuts back to Minnesota, and you have Dr. Aaron, who's going around to a big office building by the name of AIMM Alderson, which is the company that Beth worked for. And she walks up to a certain level, and that's the company that Beth worked for, and they let her know that, you know, they're building a huge factory in Hong Kong. You also find out that the Japanese man who passed away on the subway, he actually works for the same company, and he was in Hong Kong to oversee some operations as well with Beth, and a bunch of other people were in Hong Kong as well. And so immediately they're all questioned, and they seem so panicked. You know, it becomes like the panic that I get panicked, right? One of them is like, well, 2 weeks ago we were at Starbucks and I had left my coffee on the table, and she said, here's your coffee, and she passed me my coffee. And she's like, you're fine. The incubation period is not more than 2 weeks. And, you know, and they're like, well, I probably went to yoga class with her. I mean, her sweat and her breath was in the air. And they're like, you're fine. You should be fine, you know. And so they're like, well, what do we do? What do we do? And then they're like, okay, well, you guys are sure that you guys are the only ones that have had contact with her, right? Obviously, we have to self-quarantine you guys, etc., etc. If you guys have any symptoms, please call me. And one of them goes, wait, Alan. And one of them goes, Alan? Why would she be with Alan? He works on a completely different department. And he goes, no, Alan picked her up from the airport because she had some documents that she forgot to sign. And so he brought him to her, and he brought them back to the office. And so they're like, where's Alan now? And they're like, we don't know. And so immediately a doctor from the CDC calls Alan, and he picks up and he's coughing on a bus. He's like, hi, this is Dr. Ali from the CDC. I just need to ask you a couple questions. And he's like, have you seen, Beth in the past week or so? And he's like, yeah, I picked her up from the airport. And he starts coughing. And she's like, Alan, where are you right now? And he goes, I'm on the bus on the way to work. And she goes, I need you to get off the bus immediately. And so he's like, what's the problem? And she's like, well, are you not feeling well? Are you okay, Alan? And he goes, I'm not feeling too well, to be honest. And he gets off the bus, and he's sitting on the bus stop, and he starts kind of getting dizzy. And then you see both of the CDC employees rush over to him. But we don't know if they got there in time.
It just cuts it.
Yeah. Now at this point, this has become a world news cycle. Everyone in the world is talking about it, thinking about it, and very scared of it. And so you have the CDC that their pressure is amped up to the max, because in the US, if anything happens in terms of like diseases or viruses, who you gonna call? You gonna look at the CDC and say, hello, are you doing anything? Like,
We're dying.
Yeah.
hi. And so everyone's, calling the CDC. They even had Homeland Security approach them and say, do you think that this is a biological weapon? Because a lot of people are saying that it is. And they're like, no. And they're like, well, is there any way to weaponize something like this? Like, can you weaponize birds flu? And the CDC is like, no, you don't need to weaponize birds flu because birds are already doing it. Like, they're already spreading it. Like, it's fine. And so it just becomes like this huge mess. And you can almost see like the tension between Homeland Security and the CDC, because Homeland Security doesn't understand medicine and CDC doesn't understand Homeland Security. And so they both have their own jobs to do, and they have to do it together. But there's like miscommunication and different priorities going on, etc. And so it just gets really intense. And then it cuts to Switzerland. Now in Switzerland, at the World Health Organization, the doctor that was currently talking to Dr. Ellis, her name is Leonara. She is an epidemiologist, which is not so much a doctor in terms of she can administer shots. I'm sure she's qualified, but it's mainly someone who studies epidemics. So she studies the way that viruses spread, how to contain them, really just like the history of them and all of that, right? And she said that, the World Health Organization is sending her to Hong Kong to work with the organizations at Hong Kong to kind of come to the bottom of this. They need to find out how it started. So at this point, they know that an apartment complex in Hong Kong was hit. They know that Beth was hit, but how are they related? They know people in London were hit, but how are they related? That's scary if they're not related, because that means something bigger is going on. And so she goes over there and they start reviewing tapes, and they say, okay, well, where's some place that everyone must have gone? And they go through Beth's, records, and she had gone to an ATM at one point inside of a casino inside of Hong Kong. And so they said, casino, get all of the tapes from the casino. So they're all sitting there reviewing the tapes, and she says, this is crazy. There's a woman in London who recently visited Hong Kong, and she came to this same casino. Okay. So she's like, I think all things are tied to Hong Kong. And then you see one of the representatives from Hong Kong saying, well, before you make crazy accusations like that, why don't you actually find out for sure? Because that's a huge allegation, they're saying, How do you know it's from Hong Kong? How do you know Beth didn't bring it from Minnesota, And so it seems like there's a bit of tension. And so she's reviewing more and more tapes. And there's this guy by the name of Sun, right, who's kind of seems nicer, and he seems down and tense sometimes. And she'd be like, is everything okay? And he's like, no, I just got word from my village that I grew up in that my mom passed from the disease. And so she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Sun, right? And he's like, it's okay. Let's get to work. Let's figure this out. And so they're going through more tapes, and all of a sudden she goes, wait, did you see that? That waiter, that guy, is the guy that died that lives in that apartment complex. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, he just picked up Beth's drink, and he never had contact with a woman that was from London. Because they were debating, did it come from London? Did it come from, Beth? Did it come from the woman from London? They didn't know. And so that woman never had contact with the waiter. The waiter only had contact with Beth, and it was contact in the sense that Beth put her drink down and he took it.
I see.
So it had to start with Beth.
Okay.
And Beth didn't show any symptoms till she got to Hong Kong. And the other, colleague that she had died in Japan.
I see.
And so all of it starts in Hong Kong. She says, I have to get this to Geneva. And so she takes out the tape of the casino, and she's about to leave. And she goes, I'm going to go to the ministry. I'm going to have them send this to Geneva immediately. They got to see this. And so she puts it in her bag, and he's following her, and he gets on the phone, and he goes, listen, if we're going to do it, we have to do it now.
What?
Yeah. And so you're like, she's going to die.
Yeah.
And so she gets into a car, and she's being chauffeured to the ministry, and he gets into a car in a van right behind her, and you start thinking, oh no, is this about to get crazy political where Hong Kong doesn't want people to know that it came from Hong Kong, so they're going to kill her? But that seems like a short-sighted plan, because she is a higher-up official of the World Health Organization. Like, that's a bad plan. And so suddenly the van stops the car, takes out Leonara, and she's screaming, and they throw her into the back of the van, and they handcuff her to the van.
Yeah.
And so then they drive, they have her, you know, blindfolded, and then they get out of the car, and she's like, where are you taking me? Where are you taking me? You know, and he was saying things like, I heard the US and France have the vaccine. And she's like, no, they don't. I mean, they're working on it, but they don't have it. And he's like, no, I heard they already have it, and it's being secret, you know? And she's like, no, they don't. And he's like, well, I can't take the chance. And he takes off her blindfold, and at this point, she's like in the middle of like nowhere. And there's this big house, not like a nice house, but like a shed, like a farm. And he opens the door, and there's a bunch of little kids in masks. And he takes off the mask, and he says, this is what's left of that village that I grew up in. That's it. These kids. All the adults are dead.
What?
This thing is gonna wipe out our entire village. And she's like, are they sick? And then he's like, some of them, but we're gonna be the first ones to get the cure. And she's like, how? Because we have you. I don't know the cure. I don't even know if there's a cure. And they're like, no, but we don't need to know. We have you. So they're gonna give us the cure if they want you back. And we'll be first in line.
Wow. So he's... Okay,
Yeah.
he just want to save the kids, and he's kidnapped her.
And so he kidnaps her. And at this point, it starts to get a lot more like into the human side. That's very scary. Like, I think in the beginning, it's just mainly about like, damn, people are dying. This is scary. Like, don't touch your face, you know? And then it gets to, so there's talks about a cure, but who gets it first? Because you have a bunch of people in the world that have it, had it, or is around it. Who do you prioritize?
But is there a cure?
They're working on it. And so all of them are working on it. And then it cuts back to Minnesota with Dr. Erin at the CDC, who is working with all of these people. And she gets into her hotel room and she starts coughing. And immediately she's so scared. And so she runs to the bathroom and she's like, no. And she's like fumbling through her bag, takes her temperature, and she has a high temperature. And so she calls the hotel. She's like stressed out. She calls the hotel and she says, I need to get the names of every single person that has fixed my room in the last 24 hours, whether it's the hotel maid, hotel staff, anyone I came in contact with. Did anyone from the lobby come to my room? I also need the name of the person who gave me my room service yesterday. I need every single's full name, address, and phone number now. And so she has to call all of those people, and she calls her boss, Dr. Ellis. And she says, I'm sick. And he says, okay, don't panic. We're going to get you. We're going to bring you back, and you're not going to be sick, okay? We're working on the cure. We're working on the vaccine. Don't panic.
What kind of emotion is that?
And she's like, I'm sorry. I couldn't finish my work. She couldn't figure out, like, what happened, you know, where it really started. And so he's like, don't worry about it. We can just send someone else. We're going to bring you home. Erin, hang tight. And so he hangs up, and then it cuts to her in that stadium with so many people on one of those beds. Just coughing, and her CDC colleague will come and say, okay, Erin, we're going to call Dr. Ellis again, okay? And she's like, it's okay. And Dr. Ellis reports to someone, obviously, at the CDC, and he's saying, listen, we need to bring Allie back. She's one of our own. And he's like, no, too risky. We can't, right? And they're walking into an office. And he's like, no, we have to. That's one of our own. I sent her out there. I have to bring her back home. We have to help her get better. And so then he's like, no, we can't. And they immediately shut the office door. And Dr. Ellis starts screaming. He's like, listen, the CDC has an airplane with an isolation pod for situations like this so that we can bring our own back when they're sick, so that we can help them get better, but also studies. And he goes,
or at the same time, I feel like if you don't do that for her, then all the other CDC employees, how do you expect them to put their life on the line to save others?
And then that man shuts the door, and he looks like he's part of like some sort of military or some sort of defense, right? Because he's wearing a uniform with like lots of badges. And he goes, I told you we can't. That isolation pod is being used for a congressman. And
For
he
a
goes,
congressman?
What? And he goes, for a congressman. He went to Chicago, got it. We're moving him from Chicago to here right now. The isolation pod's being used. We can't send it for Erin. And right after he lands, they're shutting down all the airports.
Oh my god, that's very political.
Yeah, and he's like, what? And he goes, but that's not even it. The minute that news gets out of this, there's going to be a run on banks, gas stations, anywhere with any value, money, grocery stores. Every business is going to get hit of robbers. People are going to loot.
What?
Because in times like this, if people don't show up to work, if police aren't as many as there are,
Okay, I don't like this.
He's like, yeah, people are gonna start looting. Like, imagine it's gonna be like Walking Dead. You don't have food. The grocery store doesn't have food. Where do you get food? You got kids to feed. Where are you gonna get the food, boo boo?
Okay, let's eat. Were you freaking out when you saw that?
Oh, yeah. And then it cuts to Alan, who is, you know, the San Francisco little writer person. And he's meeting with a hedge fund owner in the park.
Okay.
And the hedge fund owner says, listen, I just want to know how much it costs to take a look inside your crystal ball. You said you were the first one that found the video of the man in Japan. And you said something about people were looking for a cure, and pharmaceutical stocks have just shot through the roof since then. And all we want to know is how much is it going to cost for you to tell us what you know for us to make good investments.
What?
Because if they had known about this, you know.
Yeah.
And he goes, listen, I've got 12 million unique viewers on my website right now. I don't think they care about stocks or hedge fund managers. And he goes, I know, but just what's it going to cost you? How much can we pay you? And he goes, well, I'll tell you this. Look into For Cynthia. And he goes, For Cynthia? What's that? And he goes, it's the cure. And he walks away.
He didn't ask for money?
No.
That boy is an idiot.
And then it cuts to him in his living room, live streaming on his blog, saying it's day 12 of him being sick, and he's taking For Cynthia, which looks like an essential oil of some sort. And he says, you guys will know if it works if I show up tomorrow.
What?
So he's faking to have it.
Oh my god, he's pumping a company.
We do find out that he made over $4 million from it,
Yeah.
which is insane. You also had a bunch of people right now,
Taking it? Oh, what do you mean?
right now in current time, making a bunch of money from selling face masks secondhand.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah. And so he's saying he's pretending to be someone who has the virus. He does not. And saying that For Cynthia works. And so he's doing all of this.
He can go to jail for that. What
and the
heck?
CDC is watching him.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ellis can be seen watching it, right? And so at this point, it cuts back to the CDC watching his live streams of him pretending to be sick, but they don't know, and saying, take For Cynthia, you know? And then it cuts to a bunch of clinics where everybody's kind of sick, and some people are healthy, and this man starts coughing without covering his mouth, and a woman's like, cover your mouth. And he's like, shut the up, bitch, you know, because they don't know each other. And then you hear a nurse yell, we only have 50 doses for today. And there's a line, right? And all of a sudden, people start just rampage running through, right? And she's like, there's a line here, there's a line, you know? Nobody cares.
gosh.
They knock her over. They break through the pharmacy glass like they're just looting these pharmacies. Because imagine if you have someone that's sick, you know? It's
Yeah.
just not good. And so they're looting these pharmacies, and it gets even worse. At the CDC, you know, he's asking, what's going on? And Dr. Ali is like, we're working on the cure. It's been hard, but we're working on it. It just keeps mutating. And she says, and it's just even crazier right now because all the nurses are on strike. The nurses union is on strike because there's not proper protocol so they can get it. So they won't be working unless people give them the proper protocols to make sure that they don't get it.
That's
and
right.
he's like, oh, and so he gets a phone call in his office with the door open, and he picks it up, and it's his girlfriend, Aubrey, and she lives in Chicago. And so she's like, are you okay? What's going on? I'm watching the news. And he's like, yeah, no, it's fine. Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. We're working on the cure. And she goes, okay, well, I mean, just stay safe, you know, obviously. And he looks around, and he goes, I need you to get in your car by yourself. Don't drive with anyone. Don't talk to people, get in as less contact as possible, and drive all the way to Atlanta right now. You need to leave right now. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Don't tell anyone that you're coming out of Chicago. Don't do anything. Go to a gas station. Don't talk to gas station attendants. Just come to Atlanta immediately.
Why so secretly?
And so she's like, okay, is everything okay? And he says, yeah, just hurry. Call me when you get in the car. And he hangs up, and the janitor's behind him.
Oh my god.
And he says, did you hear that? And the janitor goes, yeah, you know we all have people. And he leaves. And then it cuts to Aubrey, the girlfriend, in Chicago in like a grocery store, right? And she's getting a bunch of batteries, flashlights, water bottles, stocking up on things to bring on her road trip. And she gets a call from her friend. And I think her name's Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, you can see that she's on the phone with the young daughter. She's like, well, why do you sound like that? Where are you going? Are you still coming for, blah, blah. And she's like, no, I'm going to be out of town for a while. And she goes, well, what did Alice say? Because they know that she's dating someone from the CDC.
Yeah.
And she goes, nothing. It's okay. And she's like, what do you mean? The news said don't panic, but Ellis is taking care of it. They're all taking care of it, right? And she goes, okay, Elizabeth, don't tell anyone. You can't tell anyone. And then it cuts away, right?
Yeah.
Then it cuts to Dr. Ellis from the CDC being interviewed by a news network, and he's saying things like, wash your hands, don't touch your face, we're working on the vaccine, etc. And then it cuts to Alan, the writer. He's being interviewed too, and it's like a debate. And he's saying to the CDC, how do we know that this isn't something more serious? You guys are acting like it's not that serious, Are there any other things you want just people to sit around and wait for you guys to do something? And he's like, we're doing the best that we can right now. And he's like, well, just like send the whatever you guys have out. And he's like, well, we have to go through human trials, we have to test this, you wouldn't want us to just give you any sort of medicine. And he's like, well, whatever. And he's also saying, Alan, the writer, is saying things like, it's in situations like this, you just protect your own, don't you? And Dr. Ellis is like, I'm not sure what you mean by that. We're doing the best that we can here at the CDC.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, that's interesting because apparently one of your close friends from Chicago wrote on Facebook that you had told your social circle about getting out of Chicago before they were quarantined.
Oh my gosh.
Hours before they shut down Chicago. No people in, no people out. But your friends got out, didn't they?
Oh my gosh.
And so he's like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. And so then he leaves the interview, and obviously his higher-ups are like, listen, we can't fire you right now because we need you, but there's definitely going to be an investigation into this afterwards. And so at this point, it's getting really, really bad. And they just cut to a bunch of scenes of news networks saying now the count is up to 25 million infected in the U.S. Major cities have curfews, meaning that
25 million?
infected. Major cities are having curfews, meaning that if you are caught out after a certain time, they're going to arrest you. Police are patrolling, making sure nobody's getting in contact with other people. Everyone should stay home. They're bringing in tanks to infected areas with MRE meals because all of the grocery stores have been looted and bought out. And even the MRE meals are getting just taken, and they're out, and they're like, we're doing the best we can. We'll bring more tomorrow, And it's just turning into a show. And they're saying that 1 in 12 people will contract it at one point, and you just don't know when the vaccine's gonna be there. And so then it cuts to Mitch, and apparently Mitch is immune to it. There's something inside of his genes that makes him immune to it.
So they're studying him.
Yeah, but they said, we can't really study you because we don't even know what we're we need to study the virus. And so they release him from isolation, and he says, okay, so that means my daughter's immune, right? And they go, well, no, because she has half of your genes, but the other half is her mother, so she might be immune, she might not be. And so he says, okay. So they immediately go home to where he and Beth lived, and he quarantines the entire place. Beth isn't allowed to go out. She tries to, have her boyfriend come over. Andrew, the boyfriend, comes over with flowers and is like, I just wanted to pay my respects. And he's like, no, take it. We don't want your flowers. Go, go, go. And the daughter is really upset because she's freaking 15 and just wants to hang out with her boo, And so, yeah, he's just getting confused. He's going to these grocery stores trying to find food. And then one day he looks out and he sees gunfire at the house across the street.
Oh my gosh.
And then a couple hours later during daytime, he goes over to see what happened. Why were they shot dead? And it's just all the food was taken. So it's people are killing for food now. Because people are killing for food. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That is so scary. And then it cuts to Aubrey, who is now in Atlanta and staying with Dr. Ellis from the CDC. And all of a sudden, she's sitting on the couch when she hears a break-in. And there's a bunch of robbers that came in.
Oh my
and they're
gosh.
asking her, where is it? Where is it? And she's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, we know you have it. He works for the government. He works for at the CDC. We know you have it. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so they leave. She calls Dr. Ellis. He shows up and he's concerned. Everyone's concerned. You know, it's just scary, right? And it's just getting out of hand. And so he goes back to the CDC and he's asking Dr. Ali, the one that works in the highest level. And he's like, well, what's going on with the cure? And she goes, well, I have something and it works, but it still has to go through human trials. And that could take months. And then after that, the FDC, all these people have to approve it. And then that could take months. And then to get it manufactured and onto the shelves is going to take so long. And then, you know, he's like, well, Homeland Security reached out and was like, can we just put it into the water supply, like fluoride, so that we can just instantly cure everyone? And she's like, I don't think so. And so he's like, okay, well, it's Christmas. Just go, have a good night. We'll talk tomorrow, right? And she says, okay, have a good night. And she goes back to the lab and she injects herself with the vaccine because she doesn't want to wait. She wants to test it on herself.
She's testing on herself.
And so then she gets into the car and she drives and she shows up at a hospital and she walks around and finally she sees a man. She says, Dad, are you okay?
Yeah.
And he's like, don't come near me. And she takes off her mask and she goes, it's okay. And he's like, what are you doing, Allie? Are you crazy? Like, why would you even risk it? And she's like, Merry Christmas. And then he's like, this is nuts, you know? Like, you can't risk it. And she was like, well, you risked it every day because apparently he's a doctor. So, and that's how he got it. And then she's like, Dad, remember that story that you told me about that doctor who like tested their own vaccine? She's like, I think I can do this. And so he knows that like she's testing her own vaccine, right? And then it's like emotional. He's crying, she's crying, and they hug. And then afterwards he goes, you know, he won a Nobel Prize. And she's like, yeah, Dad. And she's
Is that
crying.
true or that's a story?
I don't know. And so then she leaves.
Okay.
So she tested it on herself, and then news breaks that it works. So I don't know how many days had passed, but it works. And all of the news stations are saying, like, they're about to manufacture. There's 5 secret locations in Europe and the USA. Apparently, they're not telling you where because they don't want break-ins.
Yeah.
And so there's 5 secret locations. They should be out in about 90 days. And then it'll take about a month to stop the spread because they can't make it as fast as it's spreading, right? And so all of these people are watching the news. And even the news anchors are saying, but the question is, who gets it first? You know, because you're talking about a lot of people who are sick. And then it cuts to Hong Kong, where the people are, and they get a call. The World Health Organization has called, and they've scheduled to meet up somewhere. So they put her into a van, and at this point, you can see that she's kind of grown attached to the kids, right? But she's like, okay, I'll be right back. And they put her into a van, and they meet in a little location. And someone from the World Health Organization has arrived, and he says, it's in the trunk, it's in the trunk. They're holding him at gunpoint. They open the trunk. There's a bunch of syringes. They say it's 100, okay? And he says, okay. So then he takes him into the van, and he gives one to Leonara. And then they leave her, and they drive away.
So they got the vaccine for the kids.
Yeah, and then she gets into the car with the guy that works, you know, in Switzerland with her, and they drive to the airport, and they get to the airport, and they're sitting there, and everyone's like coughing, everyone's wearing masks.
Yeah.
And then she's like just kind of looking down, like just sad. And then he's like, oh yeah, I forgot to give you this, and gives her a bag. And she's like, what's that? And he goes, your vaccine. And she goes, I already have one. And he goes, yeah, you took a placebo. And she goes, what? And he goes, yeah, we're not allowed to give out to hostages. And she goes, what? And he goes, yeah, I'm sure you haven't read the news, but a lot of the global officials, politicians, high net worth individuals, they've all been kidnapped in hopes that they could leverage them for the cure.
Oh, no.
And so we haven't been negotiating with hostage takers, so we have to give them placebos, fake vaccines.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
And so she's like, what? And then she runs off, and you never hear from her again. I don't know where she went. And then it cuts to Dr. Aaron in Minnesota, and a bunch of people in hazmat suits are using these big construction things to dig like a line of plots, and they're burying all the bodies who have it, and she's one of them.
Oh, wow.
So she died. And then it cuts to the CDC. And the CDC is now only giving out vaccines to every employee and for their direct family members. So if you have a husband or a wife or children, that's it.
So CDC gets first?
Yes, because they have to keep studying.
Okay.
And so, you know, they give 2 to Dr. Ellis because he says he's married. He's not married to Aubrey yet, right? But they give him 2, and they give him these bracelets, and these bracelets are scannable, and it says if you don't have this bracelet, you're not allowed to leave and go anywhere. So as they're slowly vaccinating people, you have to have that bracelet, and every checkpoint they'll scan you, whether you're driving or showing up at a restaurant, they scan these bracelets. And so he gets 2 bracelets and 2 vaccines, and they go, well, do you want to use it now? And then he's like, no, me and Aubrey are going to go home and we're going to pop some champagne. She's so excited, right? And he goes, okay, well, have a good day, right? And then he takes the vaccine, puts it in his car, and you can see him driving, and he shows up at this very rundown house that doesn't look like the house of someone who's a high up doctor at the CDC. And he walks in, and the janitor opens the door, and he says, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh.
And then he administers the drug to the son of the janitor and says, I can't give you the bracelet because they're going to ask how you got it, but just know that you're immune now. And then the janitor's like, thank you so much, thank you. And then he goes, you know that you offered me your right hand as a show of thanks. And he goes, yes. Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry, right? And he goes, yeah, well, neither does the virus. And then the janitor's like, sorry. And he's like, it's fine. And then they shake hands. And he goes home, and then he gives the other one to Aubrey. And the way that the CDC is handing out the medicine is by birthdays.
What does that mean? So January 1st gets
they
first?
have, a raffle, like a bingo ball machine. And they have 365 days. And on national television, they're reading out random dates. And if you have that on your ID, then you can go to the nearest facility and get the vaccine.
That's crazy.
So some people have to stay quarantined much longer than some people.
Wow.
Yeah. And so then it cuts to Mitch, who is Beth's, husband.
Yeah.
And his daughter has just been screaming because her birthday didn't come up, and she's like, are you me? Like 100 more days of my life is just gone, She's like, I probably have to wait like a year before I can leave this freaking house. Like a year of my life is gone now, and she seems really sad. And so then you see him run around to a bunch of malls, and he's getting scanned at every checkpoint because he's immune, right? And he goes into the room, and he puts out a box on her room, and she opens it, and it says, come downstairs at 8. And it's like a dress. She's like, oh. And she puts on the dress, and she's like getting ready, and she comes downstairs.
Yeah.
And it says prom night, and it's like decorated in the living room. And then she hears a doorbell ring, and she goes to the door and looks out, and it's Andrew, her boyfriend. And he shows the immune bracelet, and he goes, I got the vaccine. Your dad told me to show up. And he's like in a suit with like flowers, and there's like music playing. And so then, they're dancing in the living room, and she's like, Dad, what are you doing? Come down, right? And he's like, hold on, honey, I'm getting the camera to take pictures. And he goes into Beth's closet and grabs the digital camera that they use. And he's going through the pictures of her in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
And he's like crying because he misses her,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he doesn't see this, but you see the progression of events because this movie started on day 2, and it finally shows you day 1 at the end.
Okay.
Which was the construction site of Amberson or whatever, right? The company that she works for were cutting down trees.
Yes.
Now, of these trees that they were cutting down, a bunch of bats were flying away as they were getting cut down because the bats were inside the trees. And a bat went to a banana and ate a chunk of that banana, took a piece of it, and then flew. And as it was flying, it dropped that banana piece onto a pig farm, and the tiny little pig ate it. And then that pig grew. It was killed and then sold to a restaurant in Hong Kong, where the chef had this raw pig, not alive, but raw, not cooked yet in high heat, and was cleaning the inside of the mouth with his bare hands. And then someone said something to him in the back, and he says, oh, okay. And he wiped his hands on his apron, and then he went outside, and apparently the company had loved the food so much, they wanted to get pictures with the chef. And you see a picture of him holding hands with Beth, taking a picture at the restaurant.
That's how she got it?
So we went from rats to pigs to humans.
Bats.
Oh yeah, bats. Sorry.
So bats to banana to pig to the chef to her.
Yeah.
Wow, that's like butterfly effect.
Because he didn't wipe his hands.
Yeah.
And she probably just didn't think anything of it and probably touched her face or something.
That's so scary.
Yeah. I can see why people are germaphobes now.
So what happened? Everybody's cured at the end?
Everybody's getting cured, but 26 million lives were lost. In the movie. Alright, well, don't freak out. Moral of the story is panic is not good. Knowledge is good. Awareness is good. I sound like Ty Lopez. But panic is not good. Panic is not going to get you more food. Panic is not going to do nothing for you. It's just be calm, be knowledgeable on what to do to prevent these things from happening to you.
Don't touch your face.
Don't touch your face. Don't eat with your hands. Don't double dip together in a chocolate fountain. Do everything opposite of this video. Don't do anything we did in this video. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Please don't freak out. Please get the right information. Please don't take it from your friend on Instagram or TikTok or freaking me. Go to all of these official websites that know like the true medical truth. Don't believe in these conspiracy theories. Just stay healthy, boo-boo. Take your vitamins. I don't know if that helps. Just take it anyway. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Also, make sure to check out Simple Health, linked in the description. Bye.